With WWE's original plan for the main event of WrestleMania 38 revealed and more, this is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report for January 7th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at WrestlingHubOfficial and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. With Christian Cage mentoring the Jurassic Express over the past few months, Marco Stunt has been nowhere to be found, as it was reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that his contract is unlikely to be renewed. Marco Stunt hasn't been on the show for a while. It was even more notable when Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy won the tag titles and he wasn't brought in. He is still under contract and being paid, and AEW is trying to be different from WWE and is not releasing people who are under contract unless it's for disciplinary reasons. But there will be people not renewed when their deals come up if they aren't being used. This isn't to say he's one of them, but is never being used while his group just won the titles says something. With Hook bursting onto the AEW scene following his in-ring debut and subsequent match, many have high expectations for the son of ECW legend Taz. Speaking about the star on Wrestling, Cody Rhodes noted that he doesn't want Hook to be seen as only a meme wrestler. I think there was a natural anticipation for him, and then you'd hear people refer to him as the meme wrestler. That was kind of becoming the whole send Hook, and that is not a bad thing. If people are excited, they have an interest. The thing you have to do, not just Hook himself, but as a company, we have to turn that into no, he's not a joke. He's not this inside gag. He's actually going to be a wonderful pro wrestler himself, and in the first outings that Hook has had, he's been able to do that. That's what's so delicate about it. For Rampage tonight, Hook will be taking on Aaron Solo of The Factory. With her recently defeating Ruby Soho in the finals of the TBS title tournament, Jade Cargill has become a champion in AEW. Despite fans thinking that Cargill's win was a response to the Big Swole controversy, Meltzer would note that Cargill was always going to win. Jade Cargill's TBS title win may have come off to some as a reaction, but that decision was made before the tournament ever started. There were people internally who believe Swole gave away the tournament finish by pretty much saying they'll pick Jade before the tournament started, but very few fans made that connection. Evidently, there was a discussion with the idea the champion was given away to change it up, but they went with the original plan. Cargill is currently 23-0 in AEW, as we'll have to see how this undefeated run will last. At the Day 1 pay-per-view, Brock Lesnar would be added to and win the WWE title match during the main event, which seemed to tease a feud between the new champion and Bobby Lashley. Now, Lashley is the #1 contender following Monday Night Raw, as the Observer noted how WWE set this up. Instead, in last day negotiations and decision-making, the decision was for Lesnar to dominate the five-way, except for Lashley. He suplexed everyone all over the place. He gave everyone F5s at one point, but he never delivered an F5 to Lashley. The key spots were laid out for Lashley to spear Lesnar through the barricade, Lashley to spear Lesnar in the ring, but Lesnar would kick out, and for Lashley to get Lesnar in the Hurt Lock, where it would look like Lesnar couldn't get out until Big E saved. Then after Lesnar won the title, the closing scene would be Lashley glaring at him. On Raw, 2 days later, the original four-way scheduled for Atlanta would take place in Greenville. Lashley would go over strong, spearing everyone and getting the pin after spearing Owens, to set up Lesnar versus Lashley as the title match for the Royal Rumble on January 29th in St. Louis. While Jim Cornette had previously praised AEW for their decision to bring in former ROH champion Jay Lethal, he took to his podcast to blast the company for their misuse of the star. They bring Jay Lethal in, they beat, they announce his signing, we just never saw him again. But meanwhile, we have to suffer through 2.0 and Daniel Garcia every week. We got to see Orange Cassidy every week, but Jay Lethal, where is he? He has been hanging out with Will Hobbs. Why do you waste talent? Why do you beat talent? Why do you bury talent? Why do you make talent go away? So far, Lethal has been seen wrestling on AEW Dark, with fans hoping to see him gain a more prominent position down the line. When it comes to the release of Timothy Thatcher and Danny Burch from WWE, it was mentioned in The Observer that these two NXT stars were fired due to WWE's change in philosophy when it comes to talent. Thatcher and Burch's days were known to be numbered because of these companies' change in philosophy on talent. Both were good wrestlers, and Thatcher was very unique in his role as Toothless Timmy, the buddy of Ciampa doing a shooter-hooker submission expert gimmick. But neither were people the company was interested in for the main roster, and when the emphasis of NXT changed from being a third brand built on good matches, more serious storylines, and more of a sports feel and developmental to pure developmental, good wrestlers who weren't thought to have main roster charisma weren't going to be kept around. Also in The Observer, the recent WWE releases were brought up, as it was noted that AEW might not have the room to sign those let go. With AEW, it's hard to say. On paper, one would say Regal would be a great hire with having both wrestling, training, and administrative experience. If they wanted a television authority figure, there would be nobody better. However, in the past, they've pretty much made it clear they don't want a television authority figure. They've made it clear Tony Khan is the booker, and Khan almost never appears on television in angles because his vision of pro wrestling doesn't have that figure. Similarly, Kapoor, Katz, Sapolsky, with creative, have jobs that AEW really doesn't have. Khan is the full-on booker, and has his crew of the Bucks, Cody Rhodes, and Kenny Omega, plus listens to suggestions from others, notably the top guys. Could he use someone to alleviate the pressure of so much work? Yes. But the traditional television scriptwriter or booker job isn't really there. When it comes to training, it is QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes schools as affiliates. If Joe wants to wrestle and is healthy, one would think he'd at least be under strong consideration. Speaking to Yahoo Sports, Eddie Kingston talked about how pro wrestlers of the past went the wrong way in regards to dealing with mental health issues and even physical pain, saying he wants to break away from the old school mindset. I do things because I think they're right, not because other people think they're right. But it's what I feel, and what I feel needs to be said in the moment. You don't need to agree with me, you don't need to like me, you don't need to respect me, but I'm going to do it. We've tried the old way. We've lost a lot of people because we did things the wrong way. I've lost a lot of friends who have overdosed from drugs because they were down and out, didn't think they could get help. I've lost a couple of friends to suicide because they thought they were alone and they took their lives. We've done the old way. Let's try and break out of that now and save people's lives instead of just pushing it down the whole time. One of the most shocking firings that took place in WWE was that of William Regal. The longtime talent scout and former NXT general manager was seen as a huge part of the company, with Meltzer saying that his release left many in WWE upset. Talent and others in the system were very depressed, with many wondering the future of the brand. Regal was responsible for many getting chances, and he's one of the most knowledgeable people about wrestling worldwide, and was heavily respected across the board. I can tell you that some of the biggest names in the business would to this day come to him for advice on wrestling and career decisions. While Kairi Sane would stop making appearances on WWE programming and return to Japan, it has been reported that she is still under contract with the company. As Meltzer said, Kairi Sane publicly gave the impression she was not going to renew her WWE deal. She had stopped wrestling for WWE because she wanted to move back to Japan. She remained under contract with the promotion to work as an ambassador in the Japanese market, which also kept her from wrestling. If you recall, earlier this year, Stardom attempted to work with WWE to get her to work the Budokan Hall show, but WWE wouldn't allow it. Her deal expires next month. She could if she wanted to wrestle in Japan, and if the travel situation improves, she could work for AEW, where she'd be a great fit, coming in for specific shows and times while still living in Japan. Given the Undisputed Era has reunited in AEW, many are wondering what the group will now be called. According to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office database, a name has been filed for the stable. Robert Felice would report the name and post the logo for the faction as he wrote, AEW filed a trademark for the term Paragon on the 3rd. Kyle O'Reilly used that term to state the potential that he, Adam Cole, and Bobby Fish, the former Undisputed Era in NXT, would have if they were aligned again in AEW. With Ric Flair previously causing a stir over WWE calling Becky Lynch the man, the Observers reported that WWE has given up on this legal battle. Evidently, the reason Lynch is now big-time Bex and not the man is that WWE gave up in the legal fight over that term with Ric Flair. Flair noted on his show that she's no longer the man because he owns the rights to that name in pro wrestling. WWE previously announced that Drew McIntyre would be out of action, with this being due to a neck injury. Meltzer would report that McIntyre will go through an evaluation and determine if he needs surgery. Legitimately, McIntyre's neck has been bothering him for months, and if he kept going, he was on the way to major surgery. As of a few days ago, the plan was for McIntyre to have the neck looked at extensively over the next week. There's really nothing more known until it's fully examined. The hope is that it's not bad, and he can come back soon, at least by Mania, and then he won't need surgery, which will put him out for months. But right now, nobody knows. From a timing standpoint, it wasn't good because SmackDown has no other full-time top faces. Following Big E's loss of the WWE title, Booker T took to his Hall of Fame podcast to compare the reign of Big E to that of Bobby Lashley's, saying, "No, I don't think he had a better run than Lashley either, but there again, just look at how long Bobby has been grooming compared to Big E. He's got to be in his mid-40s or earlier. I'm not sure. I don't want to throw the man's age out there. Let's think about it. The grooming time for Lashley compared to E, getting to the point where you do get there and you're ready to have those types of matches. You're ready to go out and look dominant and put yourself in a position to have a good run as world champion." Speaking of Big E, it was mentioned in The Observer that he is the current favorite to win the Royal Rumble. Since there are 2 nights of WrestleMania, they need a WWE title match to headline the other show. The plan for that was originally Seth Rollins, likely against the winner of the Royal Rumble, with Big E the favorite, but Kevin Owens and Bobby Lashley were also possibilities. The match in that position may remain the same, but getting there is different. Also in The Observer, the plans for WrestleMania 38 were discussed, as the original idea for the main event was revealed. The belief is that Reigns vs. Lesnar, the match that was to headline the WWE's first Day 1 show at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, is still on top as the main match for the 2022 WrestleMania. The original plan was for Reigns vs. Lesnar to headline for the Universal title. One would think it would be Lesnar defending, since what would have made the most sense was Paul Heyman in some form costing Reigns the title. Instead, on Raw on the 3rd in Greenville, Heyman was back as being the advocate for Lesnar, without any kind of dramatic angle. From there, they could go a number of different ways, although long term it makes more sense for Reigns to be long-term champion simply because he's full-time and Lesnar is not. And this was your Pro Wrestling News Update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.